There we go. I'm trying to advance this, and it's not it's not working for me. So the kinds of writing skills we need in developing our RFP answers, well, you need to be able to provide facts and informative content, but that's usually the least important kind. You may need to do an evaluation or a comparison of different approaches or why you recommend a certain method or so on. Sometimes you've got to describe your processes or products you'll include or team resumes or include case studies. But the bottom line, all of this should be persuasive and clear. To the extent possible, write in a way where they come away with their head nodding up and down. Yeah, that makes sense. Not shrugging their shoulders. Does anybody have any clue what they're talking about here? Now, just a few tips to make sure you get the maximum number of points when you respond to the questions in an RFP. Number one, don't change the order of the questions. It's critical that you respond to them in the order they were written. In fact, the number one complaint of evaluators of submissions to RFPs, proposals submitted to formal RFP processes, was that the vendor didn't follow instructions. It's very frustrating. I've already described to you that they may have 20, 30, 100 submissions they've got to get through. They've got to do it quickly. And if you've decided to rewrite the RFP or put them in a different order, you just complicated the whole process. So never do that. All right, so second tip to help you get maximum points. Repeat the question in the body of your answer. Highlight it using color or formatting, white space, boldface, something, so that they can tell the part that's their question as opposed to the part that's your answer. So here's an example on the screen. I hope it's on your screen. The question, how many of the bank's clients are using systems referred to above, and then the answer is in a different color. It's indented, and it's in regular font rather than bold font. It's pretty obvious what's the answer and what's the question. It makes it much easier for them to scan it and score it. All right, third tip. Include a compliance matrix. I mentioned to you earlier that if you create that checklist of requirements, then you can turn that into a compliance matrix showing that we have responded to every one of your key requirements. Do you have to be compliant on everything? No, you don't. And so I recommend you have a range of options. We exceed your requirement, we fully meet it, we partially comply, or we don't do that. We're non-compliant. That gives you a little bit of flexibility, and so you can compensate on things where you're only partially compliant by pointing out areas where you exceed what they're asking for. But this is a useful tool which allows the scorer to run his or her finger right down the list and see, yeah, for the most part, this customer is giving us what we've asked for. Now, one last tip on getting the maximum points from your RFP answers. Don't make them search. I can't tell you how often I've seen this where somebody has answered the question and what they've said rather than the actual answer to the question was, go look it up, or we've already answered that somewhere else. I'm trying to give you an example, and for some reason it's not advancing. Okay, here we go. It came up on my screen, hopefully on yours. The question was, please describe available collection systems in each country. And the answer, and this really was in a proposal, these have been covered in our country-specific response elsewhere in this proposal. So go look it up. You really think the evaluator is going to appreciate that kind of answer? I don't think so. People sometimes say, well, Tom, they asked the same question 2 or 3 times. Can't I just say this was answered? No. No. Go ahead and answer it again. I know they ask you the same question 2 or 3 times, but you know what? Just deal with it. I mean, maybe they didn't notice. Maybe the RFP was put together by a committee and they didn't edit it carefully, or maybe they plan to score it by dividing it into sections and 2 or 3 different people need to see the answer to that question simultaneously. Whatever the reason is, just answer it. Let's talk about formatting. One of the smartest people I know is a woman named Nancy Webb. You can find her at nancywebb.com. She is a former book designer and an expert on using format to make your point. I urge you to go out and visit Nancy's website because she really knows what she's talking about. But I'll share with you just a couple of the key concepts that I've learned from working with Nancy over the years. Our goal in formatting the proposal is to make it as easy to read as possible. That means maximize the white space and use highlighting techniques so that your key points jump out. Nancy calls this document architecture, and she says that if you use the basic tools of document architecture, you make it easier for the customer to find your key points. So titles and headings, for example, subheadings to guide them into the subsections, things that will highlight your key points, such as bullet points, boldface type, the use of white space. Incorporate graphics because they are going to draw the evaluator's eye, and a good graphic will communicate better for some of your customers than words do. And to the extent possible, try to chunk your text down into short paragraphs or short units. What I want to do next is move to our final point, and the final point was dealing with electronic submissions. A lot of the purchasing agents, a lot of procurement organizations are using tools which require you to fill out forms online. Sometimes they're spreadsheets, they just want pricing, they just want numbers. What they're trying to do is make their job easier so they can get everybody giving them the exact same kind of content, and in doing that, they will make it easier for them to then compare apples to apples. Sometimes also what they're doing is trying to drive out anything other than price from the decision criteria. And that is kind of a silly way to buy things. I'm not a fan of that because I do believe, and most of us believe, that there are differences between one vendor and another. And we need to know what those differences are and make a rational choice as to whether that difference matters to us. The last tip is just think about, do we want to respond to an electronic submission or not? Is it worth it? And finally, let me give you 7 tips to help you write a winning proposal. First of all, this is the most important, focus on what matters to the client, their business problems, and the payoffs they get. Secondly, use that persuasive structural pattern, the nose pattern. Third, differentiate yourself and your offer so that they have a reason to say yes to you. If everybody's the same, then we'll buy based on price, right? Fourth, articulate a value proposition that addresses the kinds of outcomes they care about the most. Fifth, highlight the key points in your document. Put them right up front, highlight them. And sixth, make it easy to read. Minimize the jargon, keep it short, don't get too technical. Finally, proofread carefully. The last thing you should do is go through and try to eliminate the credibility killers. What are the things that we can remove in terms of misspelled words, grammar mistakes, punctuation errors, or the one that I find most damaging, accidentally calling the client by the wrong name because we cut and paste from another proposal. That doesn't go over well. So if you do those 7 things, you're going to have a great shot at building a winning proposal. Well, Sarah, that was an adventure. I'm not sure how it was at your end, but we've covered the material. Are there questions that we can respond to?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Hey. Sorry about those technical difficulties. We try to take it over here on our screen. So I hope that you guys were able to see the slides. If not, we will be emailing them to you, to all the registrants. So just want to make sure that you know that. And yes, we do have a lot of questions actually. Since we've gone over, we can't get to all of them, but we'll pick out a few. so we had a question about what if you are in front of decision makers and you get the feeling that they think your company is too small to meet their needs? Do you address the concern in your executive summary? Where is it appropriate or to talk about, you know, an 800-pound gorilla in the room, meaning your company is too small to do this, or if you feel like that's what they're saying?
Well, yeah, there are a couple of ways to approach it. What they're really talking about is that they feel at risk. So how can we minimize that perception of risk? We can't go out and hire a bunch of people in order to make ourselves bigger. But we could, for example, offer case studies, references, and testimonials which overweight our ability to deliver in spite of the fact that we're a small company. If we understand the source of the concern, it's not about, you know, necessarily about resources or size. It's really about feeling at risk. Now, if it's a project which is going to require staffing levels which exceed our current ability to provide support, we might want to consider including as part of our solution our plan for providing enough headcount to actually handle the project. Will that mean subcontracting with another provider? Will that mean going out and hiring people? What exactly are we going to do to make sure we have the folks on staff to handle the volume of work that winning this would require? But if that's not it, if it's not about the headcount on the project, if it's really just about can I trust you, look for alternative ways of providing evidence that we are trustworthy and reliable and able to deliver the project on time and on budget. Anything else, Sarah?
Yeah, we have quite a few. One that I thought was interesting is, do readers usually read hard copy or electronic versions? Is hyperlinking within a document a good idea?
For the most part, evaluators are still preferring to read documents in print, and they do that for a number of reasons. One, it's more portable. Number two, they're able to mark them up and put notes in the margins. And three, the reality is it's still easier to read a paper-based document than it is something on the screen. That's just the reality of it. They can scan and skim quicker than they can if they're only getting a screen load at a time. So what that means is that hyperlinks may not work for you. Take a look at who you're bidding to. Take a look at what they've asked for in the RFP in terms of submission. If they're asking for a digital submission, chances are they are sophisticated enough to actually use hyperlinks and to look at them, you know, within the context of a digital submission. But if that's not the case, what we may want to do is try to provide that hyperlink as an attachment in Section 3, you know, the attachments and appendices, so that instead of making them go out to the web and link, they can actually just look at it in the appendix.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I think we have many more questions, but since we've gone over, I think that we'll just, any questions that didn't get answered, we're going to email to Tom, and he's going to answer you. And again, a copy of this presentation is recorded, and copies of the slides are going to be sent. That'll be sent out within the next week. And I just want to thank Tom so much for this wonderful webinar. It was certainly filled with a lot of great information. I know, Tom, that a lot of times consultants will ask me things about this, and I definitely now feel a little bit more prepared to answer them, and that is watch this webinar. So good. I really appreciate you working with us today and all of the great content, and thank you everybody for tuning in, and stand by for copies of the presentation within the week, and have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.